Spanish it was Plataforma Arquitectura. It was too long. So eventually we said, ArchDaily, like a newspaper for architecture, short name.
Successful entrepreneur had these problems at the beginning.
I failed almost every class, study architecture in Colombia, work in Facebook, and I don't build. The case of Evan Sharp, an architect, and eventually he founded Pinterest.
Without this communication, it's not obvious how to find it.
I am very introvert.
Hey guys, today I'm excited to film the third episode of Big Baby Honest Architecture podcast, and today I have a wonderful, very experienced guest, David Basulto.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for inviting me.
No one can describe better what you're doing in the communicational field of architecture than you yourself.
For me, it's always interesting to know what is happening, and this, in a way, has been my career. I'm a Chilean born, now based in Berlin. I was trained as an architect. I have some architectural experience, but most of my career has been to found, together with David Asael, ArchDaily, first Plataforma Arquitectura in Spanish, then ArchDaily in English globally, an architecture platform that grew to be, I would say, one of the most influential online media in this field, that a few years ago we sold to a Swiss conglomerate. Then I left the company last year, and since then I continue to work in this. For me, the world of architecture is increasingly important on shaping the built environment, and that is something that the whole world is understanding. And I do this through speaking, assisting institutions, working with awards programs, but also I continue to focus on communication, creating documentary content, also working with magazines, collaborating with young creators. I am an angel investor and mentor to some of the built tech startups here in Europe.
It's very interesting what you're doing now, because your field in ArchDaily is very common to see and everybody knows about ArchDaily, but now it's a bit more in shadow. That's what you're doing. Very interesting to develop you as a person right now in the new phase of development, new projects. And for me, as a young creator, it's very important to see new ideas from such experienced people like you. So I would like to start from the very beginning, from your educational sphere of life. Was it difficult for you to manage all of the student stuff in university back then? Did you thought that this field, architecture, is not for you because of difficulties in study?
I had such a great time when I was a student, moment of creation, of doing new, but under also a very heavy kind of training. I remember that for my studio assignments, I did all-nighter almost 90% of the time over 6 years. Only for studio, once per week. But you know, it was also very challenging because I actually wanted to study medicine originally because my father was a doctor, so that was my role model. He was also an entrepreneur because he has his own practice and doing something that he was very passionate about, so I always thought that I wanted to study the same. But when I went to university, I entered to bachelor, focus on biology, and I understood this is not for me. You had to read such thick books and learn everything by memory. And I understood I had a mind that was more between, let's say, mathematics, very logical, physics, and also more creative. So when I entered biology, this bachelor, I failed almost every class, and the university told me, if you continue failing classes, you leave. You have to leave. And then I was like, whoa, what do I do? I was very confused, disappointed, because I was not achieving. What can I do with my grades? I could not enter engineering school. Oh, but maybe architecture should be like mathematics and design. So I entered architecture school, a very good one that is a Catholic university in Chile. From, I would say, most of the known Chilean architects abroad went to. It was very challenging for me because this school was very focused on, it was together with art faculty, and it was a box art school. So it was about composition, about drawing, about color. And I'm not a very artistic person. And then I failed every class except mathematics. And then I faced with failure. I was like even thinking, should I tell my parents? And then I say, no, you know, I cannot quit. I will try again. And I was very lucky because that year the faculty changed and they brought new teachers, young teachers who were from abroad, who came with radical ideas. My new first studio teacher was Alejandro Aravena. From the first day, he taught me that architecture was not about how things look, but actually how you solve problems. And that changed my mind so much. And since then, I think I understood it. And I started to do finally well in school. I started to do very good in studio, in the classes that had to do with creation. And I found myself also with a generation of people that were very passionate about architecture. Eventually I had the possibility to be teacher assistant in some classes in studio, and I ended up really loving architecture, but understanding that this was not about doing beautiful things, but about doing things that will solve a problem. And that always the result of that problem will be something very expressive, very raw. And I said, this is my path. It's something related to design. But eventually, as a hobby, I was always very connected with technology. I was lucky that my father bought for his practice a computer when I was like 8 years old. And there was always a computer that then he stopped using because at that time he was not so much into it. And I learned computation, I learned how to code a little. And this also helped me during my career because architecture is very expensive. You want to travel a little, you want to buy books, you buy materials. So I was fixing computers, doing renders, doing websites. And eventually this led me to a hobby in which I became a tech blogger for a network of blogs that eventually became the most read in the Spanish language. But nothing connected to architecture. And eventually this was what led to me to meet my partner and to start ArchDaily under the thesis that architects with better information could do better architecture, which was also what was happening to me. I was spending all the time in the library, reading Domus, Architectural Record, all these magazines to learn things, to see what other people were doing, but it was very expensive, and then was obvious that the internet was going to disrupt this. So I will say I follow a path that fulfilled me, but at the beginning I was completely lost. I am so thankful for Alejandro Aravena to really showing me what was architecture and to have this pivot, like to take another path.
And that's why it's very important to talk about the past, because nobody knows that, for example, you as a successful entrepreneur had these problems at the beginning. It's the first time I hear that you, for example, had problems in school. For me, also in architecture, it was not like a path for a creative person. I was convinced that I will study engineering. Because back to my hometown, so in Moscow, I learned in physics and math gymnasium. So I just applied for to Berlin and RWTH and to Munich, all for the engineering stuff, building engineering, something like that. And then just at the end of the period of applications, I thought that it will stress me every time. I cannot solve the problem with the perfect answer. And then I thought that maybe in architecture, I can solve the problem in different ways. And then just 6 days before the application period ends, I just move every architecture faculty on the top of the decisions. What was the pivotal moment during your first job after graduation that you saw the problem in the field? Maybe brought you to some of a kind of mental breakdown or difficulties?
And I think I was very lucky because, and I think this is common to many universities, when you're graduating, you need to do many internships.
Yes.
Construction internship, social internship, technology. And most of these internships, I invent them myself. I proposed to create a project, to do something, of course, with a tutor. This was accepted, so kind of I started being more entrepreneurial. And after my office internship, in which I was very focused on design, I had a very good time working with a very good professor. My transition was that I started to do ArchDaily in this time. When I graduated, I already had this project going on. So I never went on to work for, let's say, in a formal job or work for someone else. With my business partner, he's also very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. He was also having this kind of dichotomy. He was an urbanist and he was receiving some interesting job offers. He did some little consulting. But same as me, we found that what we were doing at ArchDaily was so interesting, so fulfilling that we said, no, we have to make this. Let's create a business model so we can stop doing the rest of things. We were doing websites for architects, some urban consultancy. We did some interior design projects. We were teaching in university. Instead of trying to do 10 things at the same time, let's do the one that we like the most. It was also an uphill road because when you go to architecture school, you don't learn how to create or grow a business. And we sought out ways to get this kind of knowledge, and especially going to people who were building successful companies, entrepreneurs. And I think along the way, we had the chance to meet fantastic people like the first COO of Google, or Reid Hoffman, who is now the CEO of LinkedIn. Also interesting entrepreneurs in architecture running successful practices, so we were always asking many questions and learning and then applying into a company that became when I sold the company, it was 65 people with offices in 5 countries, a global team, and we built this, I always say, as an architecture project. Maybe we didn't follow all the rules of, let's say, the business world, but we abstract, we apply, Of course, as architects, we try to reinvent the wheel many times, but we also learned that maybe in accounting, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. But it was a very good experience. And again, it was because we didn't have a formal education in business, and also we didn't work for someone else. So we had kind of this freedom to create a new way.
I think in the future I will concentrate on one, but now I'm like, this is all kind of my interests. And for me, it's hard to be focused only on one thing because, for example, in my architectural office, I'm involved in the team that's doing a huge project, and it's very interesting to learn from them. And for the content, it's very interesting to show people how other people think in architecture. But maybe I feel more structured time later.
No, and I think in this experience, talking to many architects, many designers, it was common to the question of focus at some point of their journey became something very important.
What's the first problem you faced during making ArchDaily like a real business?
At the beginning, since we jumped into, let's say, the unknown, there were many things that you didn't know how the cycles, economic cycles work, crises, and this could cause you some anxiety because you don't know what is coming ahead. I clearly remember because we were in New York in the middle of 2008 when the subprime crisis started.
Yes.
And this was, I think, one of the most disruptive moments in the world. That was the first time that we lost one client, and our client told, hey guys, I cannot pay you because I don't know what will happen. And for me, the most important is to save my resources to maintain my team. If this guy is having this uncertainty and is someone who has had a business for many years, what is there for us? But then we understood maybe crises are opportunities, and because we have a low-cost structure, we were always very, I would say, cautious. As a company, we always had blue numbers, but to face this uncertainty, it was not a failure, but was very challenging. I also think that to take short-minded decisions was perhaps, looking now after many years, when we took short-term decisions, that was also what could lead you to take bad decisions. So it was very hard because, of course, everybody tells you, no, you need to think about the long term, but it's not easy. You really need to have patience, you really need to meditate, because otherwise you can become very anxious and that can affect you. So I think that for many years I was like this, very anxious, but eventually I could develop this capacity to pause, to have a deep breath, and maybe try to think 2 steps ahead. I would say that other challenges had to do with communication. I am very introvert, and leading a team sometimes was very hard to express myself. As we had common agreements, people knew what to do, but more and more my team was telling me, David, I don't understand what you are thinking. Can you explain me? And I was like, why you don't understand? It's very obvious. But then, no, I understood that you need to have a proper communication. You need to come out of your mental space and share with others. And I think that at some point it was a struggle. I think I had frictions with the team, but eventually I said, whoa, how can I improve as a professional? And I seek for help, to have a coach who really helped me to open up. And I think that this was super, it marked before and after by improving my communication with others. But then there were other crises that affecting us at the end. It was when clients, online revenue for ads will go down because consumption in general will go down. But we were always trying to forecast this so we wouldn't be having to also take rash decisions or have financial problems.
That's very important to hear because for me it was also an anxiety to thinking about hiring people, to be confident that I will give a certain amount of money every single month, and it will be a challenge for myself so in the next years. What was the first exact step to found ArchDaily, so to make it as a firm?
I think it was very instinctive because when my business partner, we didn't know each other, but he called me one day in university. He told me, hey, I know that you are in the tech blogs, you are into this change of information. And he said, I think that through information we can improve the quality of life in cities. And something that sounds very abstract, very ambitious. But I understood, yeah, you're right, because if architects have better access to information, they can do better projects, they can do better buildings, we're going to have better cities. And since then we started to work together. We started this website in Spanish, and it started to grow a lot in the Chile, Latin America. But also we started to see there is so many people reading it from US, from Italy, from Japan, from China, and they don't speak Spanish. There were not websites doing this, like providing architectural knowledge for free. In North America, the architectural publishers, they were using the web to sell subscriptions. Why are they going to put their magazine online for free? It doesn't make sense. But we were done in a different way. So we thought, what if we do our website now in English? In Spanish, it was Plataforma Arquitectura, architectural platform, that today makes complete sense, but
yes.
It was too long. So eventually we said, ArchDaily, because it's like a daily, like a newspaper for architecture, short name. But also when we launched it, we were thinking, we're in Chile, we're at the end of the world, and at that time Chile was not known for anything. And eventually, because we started to do everything in English and in very good quality, and we started to do many interviews with architects in New York, people thought that ArchDaily was from the US. And we thought, oh, maybe this is helpful because it generates trust. I think in the beginning of globalization, it was like this. You will trust things that come from the Northern Hemisphere. But then the world changed, and the perspective about things coming from Chile or from unknown places was different. And we said, no, let's embrace that we are a Chilean company and how we project this to the world.
If for you was difficult as a graduated architect not being involved in building houses itself?
I think at the beginning I never thought so much about it because I really felt that doing ArchDaily was a project. The structure that we had, like with departments, with relations, how we could do an organization that was truly horizontal, but that was also at the same time coordinated. I believe we created something unique, and that was a work of, let's say, organizational design. On the other hand, I was very involved into the actual design of the website. At that time, you were really into the code, so it was really like building something. And eventually, we had many processes that had names about something that was, I would say, connected to construction. Every few years, the redesign of the website was called Less is More. We did Less is More version 1, version 2, version 3, and this was to declutter the website. You will be putting buttons, Facebook, share on Twitter, and every few years we'll say, now this is full of things. The information is the most important. Let's remove. New design. Then will happen again and again. All these processes that for me was the biggest work of architecture that we could have done. I also got personal opportunities to do projects. I received an invitation to curate the Nordic countries pavilion in the Venice Architecture Biennial. Such an opportunity to be invited by the Nordic countries, which is Sweden, Norway, and Finland, they together, and that they had the openness to invite someone. And this was not a competition, so it was even better. It's like they made a direct commission, and I said, maybe this is the opportunity to bring this kind of thinking about architectural knowledge, information into something built. I did it because it could also help ArchDaily to have something physical that, again, for architects, is something that will help to build more trust. So since then, the last, I would say, build project that I did with March Architects from Sweden, with Architects, the Architecture Museum from Sweden in Stockholm, and it was such a positive experience. But also gave me perspective to understand that what we were doing in digital, even if perhaps you don't see it as a building, it was, again, a construction of a project, of something that was very depth. So it made me to appreciate even more.
For me, it was a difficult decision to concentrate only on digital world of architecture, because one of my dreams was to build a physical something and to be involved in this construction.
We are having this struggle in this moment that the world has changed, and architecture has always been so rigid. And imagine that we study a career that is usually between 6 to even 7 years, that is very fixed, and architects do buildings. And imagine that you go through this very intense process, and at the end you realize, oh, maybe what I need to do is not what I was thinking for the last 7 years. I used to go a lot to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley, because that is a place of thinking about the future of many things. And we were received by the Silicon Valley community very well. And I remember that once a friend who has a serial entrepreneur told me, hey, David, we need to go to this meetup in the Bay Area that is called Architechy. He was not an architect, but he told me he read about this and he said, we need to go. It was near the new Pinterest offices in San Francisco, and we arrived a bit late, so already all the people were doing introductions. So we were sitting in the back and you were seeing the people introducing, oh, hello, I'm John, I did a master's here in Berkeley, I'm an architect, I am working, I don't know, in Pinterest, and I don't build. Then another guy, oh, I am Evan, I study architecture in Colombia, I work in Facebook, and I don't build. And then you understand, they are disappointed because they are not doing what the traditional architect should be doing. But on the other side, all these people have fantastic careers. Probably they are all making much better salary than any senior architect. And then you understand that the world was changing and many of these people were finding employment in tech companies. Until a few months ago, the biggest company in the world by capitalization was Apple. And they actually employ many architects because they are doing design thinking, design strategy. Our capacity of architects is very valuable. Now there are even big consulting firms acquiring design studios or hiring architects to bring this kind of thinking inside them. And this is because we have the capacity of abstraction to understand problems, translate them, deliver solutions. And also because of the way we work, we are very well prepared, not just for teamwork, but also to enable teams, transdisciplinary teams, to work together. And I think that one of the, again, most incredible outcomes of this is the case of Evan Sharp, an architect that worked in Facebook, in doing interface design, and eventually he founded Pinterest, one of the biggest tech companies in the world. What it gave to society, the possibility to do the same thinking that we do inside the studio. That is to put ideas, to visualize them, and help us to manage our inspiration. And someone translate this into a tool that could be used by wedding planners, chefs, homeowners, people redecorating their houses. And I think that Evan Sharp has to be one of the most influential architects of contemporary times. His work is touching hundreds of millions of people.
For me, for example, Pinterest is a daily routine. So I didn't use that such a big firms, tech firms, hiring people from architecture, not from architectural field of technology. So as I saw some stories of friends that I was hired by Apple, I was just, okay, so something not for me.
Well, this, you know, is interesting because at some point tech companies were very inspiring because Facebook was changing the world and people wanted to work in companies that would have a meaningful impact. The road of architecture to do a building is a very slow one. And the new generation say, no, but I want to work in something that makes a change now. But then eventually this started to bounce because architecture started to become also much more tech-driven and things started to happen faster, and the way of using software to achieve this started to become much more engaging. I can study architecture and learn about creating environments in Unity, using software to create digital twins, virtual environments, really falling in love with architecture thanks to how technology is finally entering into our field.
Mm-hmm. I think nowadays it's more and more clear because the days before inventing AI was something like technology, it's not important for architects. And then people invented AI, even big names in architecture trying to think maybe it's not so convenient right now in the modern age to use only, for example, AutoCAD. The importance of technology started to develop itself increasingly. I'm happy about it. They can concentrate more on their designs, not to make the drawing done, but to imagine how it can affect the building, so to imagine the design.
Yeah, I think there was always this struggle because always early technologies were, let's say, very rough and maybe would not take you to what you really wanted to achieve. They were always questioning, is it the tool, how it guides the hand? We always understood that tools would enable us to do things better, and as you say, to put our brain where it really matters. Today, that when there is a tool that has to do with creativity, we're all also at this struggle, like what is really the work of the architect, what we should be focusing about. What I find interesting is that now this discussion is being much more transversal because many people from outside the field of architecture are creating some of these tools in a critical way because they are saying why I cannot print or assemble a house and have a fixed cost, a fixed time. And people are saying maybe I can innovate in this field. And of course, if you do an innovation, your upside can be tremendous. And I'm seeing more and more entrepreneurs trying to leverage AI to provide solutions that are, let's say, intersectional with architecture, and they're not coming from an architectural background.
Yes, and now I would like to ask you, what are your projects now, and why exactly you left ArchDaily?
I sold the company in 2020. It started to be managed by a different organization with different rules, with a different vision. So now I have time, and what I'm doing with my time is I'm trying to have this capacity of abstraction, of looking at the world from the distance and to understand what is happening. For sure that with my background, I'm very interested in what is happening in content. Today, the way of architecture publication really changed. We're in the era of platforms, we're in the era of creators. And the traditional architecture websites are not evolving, they continue to do the same. But the context changed and the sources of information are changing. And in the creator economy, every architectural practice is their own media. So this I'm trying to understand how should continue to work, to meet a lot of people. And I'm traveling a lot to see what young architects are doing in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, and of course here in Berlin, the creative industries are very intertwined. And for me, things like High Noviety or 032C, from the creative aspect, are very positive information because they are managing communication in different ways, creativity and community. But again, I mentioned the Middle East because in all these kind of waves of seeing the world, at the beginning for me was interesting Latin America. It was bringing something new to the world. Then China, it's really revolutionized, I would say, architecture. And today I'm seeing a very strong young generation in the Gulf and in the extended Middle East who are doing very interesting things. And they are being exposed to opportunities that are enabling them to create masterpieces of architecture. At the same time, in Southeast Asia, there is a revolution going on with bamboo. Mm-hmm. Bamboo, in only a few decades, is advancing as fast as stone through millennia or wood across centuries. So all these things, I'm seeing this phenomena and understanding how they should be communicated to the world.
Half a year ago, I understood that many big firms put projects in Albanian. At the same time, I was involved in the communication with several firms. They said, yes, we have new projects in Albania. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I didn't hear something about Albanian before. Where are the different aspects of architecture are going on right now? Without this communication, it's not obvious how to find these trends.
Maybe we are so into this Western Europe world, where it's the development, where there used to be many opportunities, but now things are stuck. Think that there was kind of a crisis here in Germany, many developers went insolvent, the economy is stagnant. But again, if you look at it from the distance, you can understand that the EU development created this kind of opportunities, especially in the East. As the EU is giving access to more financing, let's say a kind of rule of law, what is happening, for example, today in Poland. I was in Gdansk in the Baltic Sea a few weeks ago, and the amount of construction there is crazy. Like, you wouldn't have an idea that this is happening in the middle of all this kind of slowdown of economy, but there are so many opportunities and young architects are able to enter, but also it's very competitive. But also because there is people who have the vision. In Albania, it's not just because the rules are improving and money is coming in. There is people in positions of power, prime minister, the mayors, who are understanding people need to live good. And if we invest in the public spaces, if we do proper urbanism, provide good rules for development, for real estate projects, and do public-private partnerships, we're going to have a bright future. Mm-hmm. And for sure, politicians want to have this because this will enable them to have the people's support. I went to a conference last year where the former mayor of Tirana was explaining all of this. You need people with vision, but also to be responsible in these places that perhaps a more top-down decision can make things happen faster, but it has to be the right decision.
Have you developed some projects that are not so obvious to see right now? So
I partnered with some Chilean friends, an architect and a producer, that had this idea to create a gallery to represent Latin American designers and architects who do objects and bring their furniture and lighting, objects for interiors to the Nordic and German market. Because I understand the value of the craft. I was building bridges and they are doing a different one. Of course, it's the world of design objects, it's distribution, it's online sales, it's to be present in the major design shows across Europe. And for me, it's very different and I have a lot of fun learning about something new.
And what advice you would give to the young professionals now in architecture field?
If you're studying architecture, it's because you're very passionate. No, it's a very hard career and many people quit at the beginning. So if you're already freshly graduated or about to graduate, try to maintain your passion, try not to lose it. I don't say that everybody should start their own company, but try to find a way that you can do what you like. And not everybody has to be the architectural designer. There are many other complementary skills that a studio needs to develop. So I think that today the most important is to be open and to be critical of what is architecture, because architecture is not just doing buildings. For me, it's a way of thinking, and how you apply this in the world can be in many different ways. I didn't know that an architect invented the Rubik cube. Then you understand those are architectural ideas, building something different, and this can be very, I would say, inspirational to create something different.
So I am finding myself today in the middle, something communicational and something physical, like building actually projects. And I would like to see what comes next. And thanks a lot for coming and for having this very important conversation for me.
Oh, well, and congratulations on what you have built, because in a way that is why we're having this conversation. And thank you for connecting me with your audience, so I can share this experience with more people.